Today we're going to do another turning project. This one is my most ambitious yet. I'm going to take this poplar and this walnut and I'm going to turn it into a checkerboarded bowl. At least that's the plan. Never done it before, but then again, what's new? We better get started. Before I started filming, I planed all of my boards down to a uniform thickness. These are approximately 3/4 of an inch. Now, I'm ripping them all to 2 inches wide. Keep in mind, the wider they are, the larger diameter bowl it'll make. But for my purposes, a 2-inch strip makes a 7-inch diameter bowl, and that's the biggest my lathe will turn. I've set the miter saw at 18 degrees, and I've set a stop up so that as I cut each pie shape, the long side of the pie is 2 inches wide. And again, this 2-inch width on the long side is specific to my purposes in order to make a 7-inch bowl with 10 pieces of segment in each layer. Now I do a little sanding to get all the fuzzies off. And then when it comes to assembly, I use a paintbrush to paint glue on both sides of the wedge. And I alternate between a poplar and a walnut. I continue building the ring until I have 10 in a circle. 10 times 18 degrees on either side of the pie equals 360 degrees. Now with a hose clamp, we tighten it down so that it can dry. While the segment layers are drying, we're going to glue up some walnut for the base. We've already cut this out at roughly 6 inches in diameter. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to turn it down on the lathe. We glue it and clamp it. Once the segments are dry, we take the clamps off. And now you can see if we alternate the layers, we get a checkerboard pattern. Now to glue all 3 of our segment layers together. Now we're going to clamp these up with the remaining clamps we have in the shop so they can dry. Here's our base. It's dried enough that we can turn it. We're going to thread it on our worm screw, pull our tailstock up, and now we're going to turn it down round. A sharp roughing gouge makes quick work of this process. Now that we've got it round, we're going to add a little decorative edge to the bottom of the bowl. We need to cut a little dovetail mortise in the bottom of the bowl so that we can flip it around and put it in the chuck. We're using a smaller gouge to hog out most of the material. Now switching to a skew chisel, we'll do the dovetail undercut on the hole. Now that the initial prep for the base is done, it's time for more glue up. We're gluing our segments to the base we just turned. The longest part of making a segmented bowl is all the time it takes for the glue to dry in between. Once it's dry, we expand our chuck in that dovetail hole that we mortised. Now using our gouge, we're going to turn the segmented portion down perfectly round. We're also going to add a taper as we go. We continually move the tool rest closer as we take off more wood. You can see the taper starting to form. Now we're working the edge a little bit to give it a round over. And Now going from the end, we're going to start hollowing the bowl out. This is the most time-consuming part. There's a lot of wood to remove. Believe it or not, this is about the best camera view you're going to get of this process. If you wait around long enough, it gets worse. Somebody put their fat head and face in the way of the camera. Let's take a moment to talk about male pattern baldness. Approximately 25% of men who have hereditary male pattern baldness start losing their hair before the age of 21. By the age of 35, approximately 66% of men will have experienced some degree of hair loss. By age 50, approximately 85% of men will have significantly thinner hair. Talk to your doctor today about hair loss treatments, or do like I did and invest in a $20 pair of hair clippers. Remember, bald is beautiful. After we get the bowl turned to the shape we want, we have to start sanding it. I started at 80 grit and I worked all the way up to 400 grit. Once we get everything sanded, we're going to give it a coat of lacquer sanding sealer. With it still chucked on the lathe, we give it a good coat, and when it's dry, we sand it off again with 400 grit. This gets any of the raised grain back smooth. And for our final finish, we're using a clear gloss lacquer. And here's the finished bowl. I think it turned out pretty good, but let me know what you think down in the comments below. I actually filmed this project months ago, and I'm just now getting around to editing it and putting it out. Since then, I've turned several more segmented bowls. These particular bowls here are walnut and cherry. And that brings us to my very favorite bowl. This one is made completely out of oak, specifically the historic oak stair treads that we used in an earlier video to make our bookshelf. I really love this one, and it's got some nice historic and sentimental value. You may also notice that it's a little larger than the others and has more segments. I was able to figure out a trick where I offset my tool rest and got a slightly larger diameter. Well, that turned out better than I ever imagined it would. I'm brand new to turning, and this is only the 5th bowl I've ever turned. The first 4 being very simple bowls turned out of a solid piece of log. I love how the poplar and the walnut contrast, and I love the checkerboard pattern. I've seen a lot of people turn segmented bowls, and I thought, I'll give it a shot. And I am super pleased at how it turned out. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope you'll tune in next time. Thanks for watching.